What up, perps? Kid Copious. Back on my t-shirt. Purple State Party. You know what we're doing here. We're repping America, the center, common sense, and then all important, freedom. We got a lot to cover this week. The wheels are coming off the bus, and it's time to sound the alarm. So let's get it popping. Yeah. All right. So we're going to kick this one off with some really interesting news. I don't know how buried this is going to get because this is, in my mind, this is pretty monumental. The FBI knew all along about Joe and Hunter's business dealings, the laptop's authenticity, and did nothing. And this comes from their own files. Within several days of the New York Post breaking its blockbuster 2020 story about Hunter Biden's laptop, the FBI received a flash drive containing emails and text messages from the cell phones of one of Hunter's business partners, confirming the contents of Hunter's computer were real and not disinformation. In other words, they had the message that Hunter sent and the message that was received. Okay, so these weren't just concocted things that were put on a laptop with no real context to back them up. They had that. But then they came out and led social media and the public to believe that it was disinformation. The Russians had faked it all. On October 23rd of 2020, the CART team, computer analyst and response team, took into inventory the flash drive, which was loaded with emails and texts from an iPhone and two BlackBerry, RIP BlackBerry, that Hunter's former business partner, Tony Bobulinski, used to communicate with the president's son about a lucrative joint venture with Chinese nationals. It's clear from the 302 report that the FBI knew all along, that this was legitimate. By the time they had gotten around to kind of investigating, they already had Twitter censoring the Post report. It was already shut down. They had people sign letters suggesting that it was fake, even though many of those people knew it was real. They knew it was real. They had corroborating evidence. But instead of saying it was easily that it was fake, they slapped a warning label on it. They said it was not easily verifiable, when in actuality it was verified. They know that Bobulinski and Joe Biden and Hunter Biden personally spoke with Bobulinski about his son's Chinese joint venture known as Sinuhawk on two occasions, and they list them: May 2nd, 2017 at the Beverly Hills Hilton, and May 3rd, 2017 at the Milken Institute conference in LA. They know when they spoke about these things. This is not some fantasy that was pulled out of the air. They know about these things. They have confirmation. They also noted that Joe Biden was to be cut in the profits. An additional 10% was to be held by Hunter Biden for the big guy, which was a reference to Joe Biden. They knew this. They had both sides of the conversation. They knew this was verified information. They also noted that Bobulinski witnessed a large diamond gemstone given as a gift to Hunter by Yi Jianming, one of the Chinese partners in the deal. And the U.S. has long suspected this dude Yi for working for Chinese intelligence. They knew this. And yet, they shut it down and they made it look like it was the Russians working for Trump. And they got Joe elected. I ain't going to get into all that part of it. But the worst thing that has happened because of this now is what we're seeing at the border. You know, it used to be, if you got caught at the border, you'd be deported, and it would effectively hamper or even end any legal immigration on your part. So the only people who made that run at the border were desperate people who were already close by. People particularly from Mexico. And what happens when, say, a Mexican illegally enters the country? Well, oftentimes, they have relatives who got here legally, DACA, whatever. They have relatives here. They have a structure that's going to give them some housing, that's going to help them assimilate to the American lifestyle, learning English, for example. Possibly even jobs. The best chicken I can find in LA, and I live in an area where there's a lot of good food. Best chicken is right on the corner of Alameda and some side street. Now, that is part of a catering company, a restaurant, and they set up a little grill outside on the street, and they cook food. Now, if one of their uncles came across the border illegally, he could work there. Not legally, but I don't give a shit about that. He's contributing. He's not going to be a blight on the public dollar, okay? Because people who come into this country illegally used to think they weren't getting public assistance. Now it's a completely different ball of wax. Now you could travel from Venezuela and come across the border because what? They're going to give you a cell phone to track you? You just throw that in the back. Well, following that is going to be gangs and con artists who prey on those communities. So we're going to set up, for example, a Venezuelan area where a bunch of Venezuelans who can't get jobs, don't speak English, are living on the streets. Well, they're going to get organized by a gang. And yes, the percentage of criminals coming into the country right now has got to be at an all-time high. It has to be. Before, if you were trying to get into the country to operate a gang of, let's say, MS-13 in Billings, Montana, you ran the risk of getting caught at the border, interrogated, arrested, blah, blah, blah. Now, they're going to slap an ankle bracelet on you, release you, and tell you to come back in 2027 for your amnesty hearing. Well, you rip that ankle bracelet off, you go to Billings, Montana, and you set up the gang. It's that simple, so why not? There's less risk. If you give criminals, con men, all the scam artists, if you give them less risk, they will take more chances. It's just math. So yeah, right as I finished wrapping up last week's show, they passed the budget, and Bowman here, not in this picture, because there's no picture up on your screen yet. Anyhow, he pulled the fire alarm. And we'll get into that in a second to the whys. But first, let's just have some fun here. Buffalo guy kicking himself for not just pulling fire alarm to evacuate Congress. Yeah, January 6th, nobody pulled the fire alarm. It's kind of weird in retrospect now, ain't it? New pictures, though, threw cold water on this guy's claim that it was an accident. Look, I do fire alarms for a living. That's what I do for 8 hours a day. I go around and I test fire alarm systems. I have keys to open these things up, so I can set them off a different way. But regardless of that, this is not something, this pull station that I see in the picture there is not one that's easy to set off. I mean, it's easy if you're trying to, but it takes determination. He pulled the fire alarm, okay? He was not trying to get through a door. I love this one. Speaking of January 6th. I just derail myself, don't I? But of course, he said, no one in this country is above the law. So, insurrection, buddy. There you are. Committing insurrection. You tried to stop a vote in Congress. I'm sorry, I didn't make the rules, man. The other side made the rules, January 6th and all that. I'm sorry. It's much like we have airline rules now because of 9/11. Sorry, you can't bring your bottle of shampoo with you. Sorry. It's got to be a tiny thing. You can't, no, sorry. Rules are rules. But yeah, I mean, fire alarms are not designed to be easily set off, okay? And he was a principal. He knew what he was doing. And like you said, nobody's above the law, so at least a fine set forth in whatever, a bunch of numbers there, or, 6 months in prison. We can't have people running around pulling false alarms. And the problem that I see with this is if this is the tactic that the liberals are going to use, the left is going to use, pulling fire alarms, they're going to spread it to their young generation. The young and the dumb, unfortunately. Yeah, I bet you we see an uptick in this. But the Democrats are trying to fix the problem. They propose a $12 billion study to determine what this strange red handle thing he does. And it sets off a fire alarm, you nitwit. But you know what? I'm not here to bash one side over the other side. I want to bash both sides. But in bashing these sides, I'm also going to give credit where credit's due. The U.S. announces sweeping action against Chinese fentanyl supply chain producers. So they're charging 8 companies, they're indicting 12 executives, and they're imposing sanctions against 28 people and companies, mostly in China, but also in Canada, that will cut them off from the U.S. financial system and prohibit anyone in the U.S. from doing business with them. Because They're the ones supplying fentanyl to the Mexican cartels, who are running it up in many different ways, not just, across the border, but not just through our open gates. They're smuggling it in. Fentanyl is a very easy thing to smuggle. That's the problem with powders that can be reformulated into other things and then broken down. Yeah, the drug cartels have scientists, Walter White's working for them, ways of figuring out how to get the drugs across the border. But at least we're stepping up and we're going after the known entities that are involved in this. This is how we ended Quaaludes. It used to be a drug. Ask your parents. I don't even know about it, and I'm old. But anyhow, I probably did them. I did a lot of stuff. But when we know where the source material is coming through from, you just cut the head off of it. That's all. I mean, it's not that hard, It's really not. So I bring this up because Nancy Mace, last week I was talking about how McCarthy proposed a bill that was going to limit some government programs and reinstate some. And I thought it was a pretty good bipartisan bill, but 21 Republicans voted against it and sank it. And in return, we then had to pass a bill that the Democrats loved, which is just spend at the 2023 levels. Great. But one of the names that surprised me was Nancy Mace, because she's a Republican, okay? But she understands that these laws that some places like Texas have passed on abortion are draconian. This is America. I am pro-choice because this is America. All right? I don't like late-term abortions. I think enough is enough at some point. But, when you outright ban abortions with no exceptions, that's not what America believes in anymore. She's also an advocate for marijuana laws. She has actually said to Yahoo News, the U.S. has the best cannabis of the world. Great. We are starting to look purple state. Pro-choice. Pro-pot. Great. Love it. She's also for some restrictions on gun ownership. And I think there are some restrictions that do make sense. I mean, if we know that you're up to no good, you shouldn't own a gun. That makes sense to me. Make sure that every sale is at least run through some sort of database. I get it. I'm for that. She is a moderate. She worked with the progressive Representative Barbara Lee, to clear a backlog of 100,000 untested rape kits. Okay? And at the same time, she sponsored a bill that would ban trans athletes from girls' sports teams. If the emphasis is on girls, that's fine. I was disappointed in her. But speaking of the thing at the end there about transgender athletes, there have always been transgender athletes. Not very many, not at notable professional levels or whatever. But these are people who, in my estimation, started off life already leaning more to one side than maybe they presented, okay? These were not young men in their prime who simply took hormones for a year and then blew all the women out of the water. There's a South Park clip going around about Power Woman. You should look it up. Guest appearance in there. Not by me, but by somebody I used to know. Bow, bow, bow. But anyhow, the reason why I support those types of laws is because it has changed, okay? These are no longer people who are in their 30s and 40s who are competing in amateur competitions. These are college-age men, okay? I agree with a lot about what Barbara Lee or an AOC says. I agree with a lot of it. I really do. But not to the extremes they're taking it. We need to show compassion and understanding to our trans youth. But opening up locker rooms and bathrooms and all of that, that's not the solution. Okay? That's not the solution. I As somebody who often has to use public toilets, I love non-binary toilets. I could go in there all by myself and just chill. But I'm disappointed in Mace. I thought we had somebody there. Somebody who might move the bar a little purple, but no. Huh. The only thing cuter than a red panda is a baby red panda. So that's a nice place for us to take a quick break. Democrats are wasting tens of millions of dollars in California Senate race. This is a spin-off because, Dianne Feinstein died and, Gavin Newsom, as we'll get into his motives, but he apparently, LaFonza Butler, managed to find, I guess, a black lesbian. That's great. That's 2 boxes for you. Perfect. All right. Her only credentials here are the president of Emily's List. And you know what Emily's List is? Emily's List is a political action committee, a PAC, I guess, that collects money and gives it to pro-choice Democrat women. Very specific box that you have to check. You have to be a woman, you have to be pro-choice and a Democrat. Fine, great. That's what you did. They talk about Butler's path to the Senate here, where she will be the lone black woman in the upper body and the first to call that chamber home since Vice President Kamala Harris, so just a couple years ago. Well, it was set up because Newsom made a couple promises. One, to select a black woman. Okay, I don't have a problem with that. I have a problem with making it specific. I have no problem with her being a black lesbian. I really don't care. Okay? We've not seen great things out of the black lesbians lately. Maybe, but no chance she does okay, but the odds are stacked against her. I'm sorry. And not to select any of the Democrats already running for the seat in 2024 so as not to play favorites. You notice he didn't promise the best person for the job. Okay? This woman is so not right for the job. She lives in Maryland. She doesn't even live in California. Look, why is it that when politicians make bad promises, they keep them, and when they make good promises, they break them? Why is that? She's not the best person for the job. She doesn't even live in California. As Babylon B points out, California senator grateful for new job with short commute from home in Maryland. There we go. Well, fucking lovely. Newsom says new senator was most qualified candidate in the 0.0001% of population he chose from. Not the best person for the job. Just virtual signaling. We now give her tax dollars to do a job she's not qualified for. Okay, Emily's List, I could probably run it, but I know people watching definitely could. If you're the boss, do you want to pay for somebody who's not qualified? I was watching Kitchen Nightmares, Gordon Ramsay, its return, Kitchen Nightmares 2023. This dude was paying, not Gordon Ramsay, but the restaurant owner was paying the chef $100,000, and he didn't even do pricing. He didn't even do the cost of his food. He didn't even clean his refrigerator. He had no training. He had been working in the business as a chef, but he didn't know the business side of it. $100,000 and not qualified. Again, Gavin Newsom throws dart at board covered in black lesbians to select next senator. I don't have a problem with her being a black lesbian. I want to make that very clear. In fact, you know what? I don't give a fuck. Okay? I don't care. There's nothing about me that would care about that. Qualifications are what matters. She's not qualified. She doesn't even live in the state. And then Newsom, the same frickin' week, was on Hannity. And he tries to say that we're more energy independent today. Look it up. It's a fact under Joe Biden. He finds some stupid-ass quad margin. Dude, we're buying all of our shit from China to build batteries and electric vehicles and solar panels and windmills. Everything that the left wants is going through China. When our enemy controls our energy source, we are not independent, okay? And he tries to blame the gas prices. I'm not going to get too much into this. This says it all right there. 51 cent State excise tax. Okay, let's look at another bullshit one. Low carbon fuel standard. Come on. Cap and trade. It's one of those crazy, like, carbon offsets. Nobody buys that shit. Look at how much is on there. If you look at the federal excise tax and the state and local sales tax, two taxes that I don't think any of us can argue with, that's 30 cents. So California then adds another $1 a gallon. $1 a gallon, folks. 10 gallons, $10. $10 for 10 gallons of gas that you're paying because the state of California needs so much money because all they do is subsidize. 2-cent state underground storage tax. Cap it. That's why we're paying high gas prices here. Gavin makes stupid decisions without thinking about the consequences. And here's a great one that really illustrates that. The LAPD is confronting a unique challenge as two of its newest recruit officers are DACA recipients. California passed a law saying non-citizens can serve as police officers, except federal law says they can't possess guns or buy ammo, which means when they're off duty, they can't carry a gun. So they're not just a random off-duty police officer out and about who might be able to affect change in a violent situation. No, they're unarmed now. They leave the police station, somebody can just follow them home, and they have no defense. Because this is fucking stupid. You look at your law. Oh, we're going to allow non-citizens. Oh, but they won't be able to take their guns home. Okay, non-starter. Moving on. Why can't our politicians do that? McCarthy was ousted as speaker. Hakeem Jeffries is the biggest winner. He's the minority leader. Again, yeah, they had an opportunity to show unity, but they listened to a guy, a fucking perv gets here, who's an always Trumper. There you go. That's your word. Always Trumper. That's what describes these fuckers. They're so in love with the cult of Trump. Now, look, I voted independent the first round with Trump. Okay. I voted for Trump the second time around because I thought he earned the job. When he lost, he went cuckoo. Okay. We need unity now. Just like Joe Biden getting reelected will cause another 4 years of disunity. Trump getting elected, 4 years of disunity. You're looking at, like we were talking about Nancy Mace right there, pro-choice Republican. Wow. Talk about a chance to bridge the gap. But no, she sides with the always Trumpers. Fucking disgusting. I'm not going to get into any more of this. I'm sickened by it. Both sides wanted us shut down because they were going to blame the other side. That's what they were going to do. The problem we have now is these group PACs, these political action committees. Like we were talking about Emily's list with Butler. We don't need our politicians beholden to the party. We need our politicians beholden to the citizens who vote for them. And the only way to do that is to stop supporting these giant PACs, these George Soroses. Look at George Soros, all this money to just throw around, and all we get out of it is a bunch of shitty DAs. The only reason we don't hear about some of the other Soros nominees is because they're too busy not doing their job at all. They're not affecting any sort of change. They're just going with whatever the standard was of their predecessor. But we need donors to start supporting individuals so that they are not beholden to the fucking party. Whether it's red or blue. Orwell taught us that allegiance to the party over everything else is trouble. And I thought we had a shot here with no labels. They're getting into it with the Democrats. No leaders, no labels leaders also sent out a letter in response to an email sent by the director of the Utah Democratic Party to county chairs in which he said no labels was a threat to our democracy. But then we get into this part of it. Democrats have expressed concerns that a third-party bid by no labels could spoil the 2024 election in favor of Trump. No Labels has maintained that it'll end its efforts if that push will help Trump. So not really a third party. Just Democrat light. just Democrats? Even more far left Democrats? Because they're certainly not in the middle. Because if you're in the middle, you'll take Trump over Biden at this point. Because Biden is so far left. Yes, Trump plays to the right, the extreme right, but I don't think he's going to do much about that. Roe versus Wade said that the federal government can't make abortion laws, so what can he do about that? Either one of them is a bad choice. I hope the libertarians have somebody. Because we need to put an end to this nonsense. Top California Teachers Union wants homeless people to sleep in public school parking lots. They're going on strike, and they're using the strike to make these crazy left-wing social changes. In Oakland, they wanted reparations for black students. In Portland, they threatened to strike if the district didn't provide subsidized housing for poor students. Why is it the school district's responsibility to provide housing for these people? But, hey, who knows, you know? Putin's threatening the West with some nuclear weapons, and look at those suckers. He got stuff that flies around for days on end and can just drop individual nukes. So, who knows? Maybe all this bickering will be over soon. Frickin' nuclear holocaust because of the way we're dealing with things. We didn't want to get involved in the Ukraine. It's turned into a financial Vietnam, and we don't need to be fighting proxy wars with them. I don't, honestly, I don't know what's to be gained. I love a good fight with Russia, but at this point, I don't know, man. We got to focus on China. But yeah, Putin. You know, before I go here, I just wanted to touch base on this. This was very interesting to me. Democrats sell Colorado tax hike as a tax cut. And the way they do it, it's a very complex situation there. They have some weird stuff with their property taxes. They remove some stuff. But what they said here was, shall the state reduce property taxes for homes and businesses, including expanding property tax relief for seniors, blah, 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 and fund school districts by using a portion of the state surplus up to the Proposition HH cap as defined in this measure. By using a portion of the state surplus. You know what that means? Colorado taxpayers will never see a tax refund. That's the surplus. They will raise the amount of tax they collect on you if you're owed a refund. It repeals the Taxpayer Bill of Rights by turning what was a taxpayer refund into a slush fund for Democrat spending priorities. See that? That's why we can't have uneducated voters, because the shit gets slid by them like this. Oh yeah, we'll keep the property taxes low, but if we need more money, it's coming out of your refunds. Boom. That's government right there. Babylon Bees. FBI stops by Antifa riot to ask if they've seen any dangerous MAGA around. I think it's clear from what we saw at the start of this show that the FBI worked to make sure that Joe Biden got elected. They covered up very damning information about him and his son's dealings with China and other places like that. It's possible, very possible, that people would not have supported Biden had they known that his son was getting diamonds from Chinese spies. But just like good fascists of the past, Mao, Lenin, Hitler, Stalin, you need to discredit your enemies in the worst way possible. And that's what's going on right now. They're literally talking about re-indoctrination camps to cure MAGA extremism. Meanwhile, you have climate activists who are gluing themselves to highways to protest oil, which we already know is bad. We have people rioting over a guy like George Floyd who participated in his own demise. But MAGA is the dangerous terrorist organization. Well, I'll tell you, I don't like Antifa, And I really want to make America great again. But as far as that MAGA side, we don't need that either. We don't need any extremists in this country. Two things that really ruin any country: government corruption and extremism. We already fucking know this. Just because one side has a lot of bad apples doesn't mean that your side is free of bad apples. That's something to keep in mind. I'm Kid Copious. I'm Purple State Party. And so are you. Love one another. I love you. I appreciate you. And if it's not clear, it don't matter if you're black or brown, queer or straight, left or right. To me, you are a human and I love you, unless you are an asshole. Now, everybody, let's dance it out.